Hello everyone, thank you very much for having me at this MedComms Network and Brunch event. My name is Obaro Evuarherhe. I am a principal consultant at the value demonstration practice in Oxford PharmaGenesis, specializing mostly in systematic reviews and the deliverables that accompany them, so abstracts, posters, reports, and manuscripts. So today I'm going to talk to you about a systematic review I've done that has recently been published in the Research Integrity and Peer Review Journal. And we looked at the effects of professional medical writing support on the quality, ethics, and timeliness of clinical trial reporting. So my co-authors were William Gattrell, who is in Ipsen Pharma, as well as Richard White and Christopher Winchester from Oxford PharmaGenesis. So in the interest of transparency, this study was funded by Oxford PharmaGenesis. Like I just said, myself, Richard White, and Chris Winchester are employees of Oxford PharmaGenesis. Will Gattrell is with Ipsen, and of course Chris and Richard are directors of and own shares in Oxford PharmaGenesis Holdings Limited. I'd also like to acknowledge Charlotte Cookson and Gemma Carter for their assistance with reviewing the manuscript. And we'd also like to thank Shruti Shah for providing the full paper for one of the identified Congress abstracts. The full poster, sorry. So first of all, as an introduction, the pharmaceutical company is under increasing scrutiny for a perceived lack of transparency in the disclosure of clinical trial reports. And as we know, the timely and accurate reporting of clinical trial results is a scientific and ethical imperative. It reduces duplicative effort, when scientists have the most up-to-date hypotheses with which to develop their research, and in turn reduces waste of funding towards clinical trials. So this scrutiny is best illustrated by a website by Ben Goldacre, All Trials, which basically names and shames the unreported trial of the week. So there's a lot of scrutiny on the pharmaceutical industry, and this does, in all fairness, this does encourage further disclosure by pharmaceutical companies with regards to their clinical trial results. So in light of this, the various medical publication associations put together a joint statement which says that professional medical writing support helps authors and sponsors disclose their research in peer-reviewed journals and at scientific congresses in an ethical, accurate, and timely manner with the ultimate aim of advancing patient care. And professional medical writers do help this because they have extensive knowledge of ethical publication guidelines. So in light of all this, we conducted a systematic review to identify and analyze published studies that investigated the association between professional medical writing support and the quality, ethics, and timeliness of clinical trial reporting. So outcomes that we were looking for were just basically related to quality and ethics or timeliness in any way based on the paper that we found. So examples of quality and ethics outcomes include adherence to publication guidelines like CONSORT or CONSORT for abstracts, but also anything else to do with quality or ethics like quality of written English and reporting of non-pre-specified outcomes. And also timeliness was related to anything to do with the speed of publication. So for instance, time from study completion to primary manuscript publication, or time from submission to publication. So any speed-related outcomes were included. So first of all, just a brief recap of the systematic review process. A systematic review is a systematic approach to identifying all the studies that are relevant to a particular research question. So in terms of the steps of a systematic review, you use defined databases and you modulate your research question to fit into what is known as a PCOS process, which stands for Population, Intervention, Comparator, Outcomes, and Study Design. So you define your question and then you interrogate these databases and you come up with a long list of potentially relevant studies, and then you systematically go through these studies alongside an eligibility criteria where you sort of pick the studies that are relevant or not relevant, and then you whittle them down to studies that are still potentially relevant, but you look through the full paper to confirm their eligibility. Then you extract the relevant data from studies that are confirmed to be relevant, and then you report your findings through tables and visual representations. So we carried out a systematic search with Embase, Medline, and the Cochrane databases in March 2018. And our search strategy comprised terms relating to medical writing, medical publication professional, and medical communication, combined with terms for observational, cross-sectional, or epidemiological studies. With no limits on dates, language, or country in which the research was conducted. We also carried out supplementary searches by searching through the ISMAP Congress proceedings, and also looking through the journals Medical Writing and The Right Stuff, using terms like medical writ and medical publication professionals, and just doing a Control F and going through the PDFs of the abstract books from this Congress and from these publications. The supplementary searches, however, were limited to 2014 to 2018 for just to limit the scope of the research. So, identified studies were screened against eligibility criteria in accordance with PRISMA guidelines, and then studies for inclusion were in English, and they evaluated the quality, the ethics, or the timeliness of articles reporting clinical trials. So these are studies that looked at other studies that were developed with or without professional medical writing support. So we included studies that compared other studies developed with or without professional medical writing support. So what did we find? The PRISMA, this is known as a PRISMA diagram, which summarizes the whole systematic review process. So we identified 97 potentially relevant articles. We found another 3 that were identified through the reference lists of some of the studies that we found. And so we reduced to 75 that were potentially relevant. So we screened through these, and then we whittled down to 11 that we looked through the full papers. And then 8 studies were confirmed to be relevant. 3 were full publications, 2 in peer-reviewed journals, and 5 were Congress abstracts. 4 were poster presentations, and 1 was an oral presentation. So in total, the 8 studies analyzed 849 articles that had been developed with professional medical writing support, and compared them with 2,073 articles that had been developed without professional medical writing support. As you can see from this timeline, a lot of the research has been done in the last 5 years. A lot's been done by Will Gattrell and Shruti Shah, as well as Karen Woolley, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So before 2015, it was a very sort of relatively sparsely researched area. Okay. So in terms of some quality and ethics related outcomes, 3 studies looked at the effects of professional medical writing support on adherence to consort guidelines. So Gattrell et al. In 2016 found that the proportion of articles that completely reported at least 50% of assessed consort items, so with professional medical writing support, you had high likelihood of adherence to at least 50% of consort items. Similarly, in a study by Jacobs in 2010, consort items were significantly more likely to be completed in papers with professional medical writing support than in papers without professional medical writing support. And again, Shah et al. Showed that consort adherence was more complete in articles with professional medical writing support. So articles with professional medical writing support, similar to the Gattrell finding, with professional medical writing support, more consort items would be adhered to compared to studies developed without professional medical writing support. Now, in terms of consort for abstract, we found that professional medical writing support didn't make much of a difference. So it didn't have a negative effect or a positive effect. Consort for abstract guidelines are sort of an extension, but are fairly different from consort guidelines. So evidently, professional medical writing support doesn't necessarily improve adherence to consort for abstract guidelines, but doesn't impair it either. One study by Gattrell in 2016 also looked at the proportion of articles rated by all reviewers during peer review as having acceptable standard of written English. And with professional medical writing support, 81% of articles were judged to have acceptable standards of written English, compared with 47.9% of articles developed without professional medical writing support. So another positive effect of professional medical writing support with this finding. Now, another study by Gattro looked at a range of journal or article-related outcomes and found that with professional medical writing support, studies were more likely to be published in a journal with an impact factor. Interestingly, I hadn't really thought about, publication in journals without impact factors. So professional medical writing support significantly improved the chances of publication in a journal with an impact factor, and the mean impact factor of publications was significantly higher with professional medical writing support. However, with some article-related outcomes, so to do with the impact of the article on publication, so the number of citations, the number of views, or the altimetric score, which is a kind of which illustrates the sort of the buzz caused by the article. Professional medical writing support did not significantly affect, they didn't improve or impair these outcomes. Yeah. And then with more of an ethics related outcome, reporting of non-pre-specified outcomes. So when studies are registered, they should specify the outcomes that are going to be looked at in the study. And sometimes the authors might choose to report outcomes that were not pre-specified. So with professional medical writing support, this was less likely to be the case. So non-pre-specified outcomes were significantly less often reported in articles with professional medical writing support compared with articles developed without professional medical writing support. And in terms of timeliness, the results varied. So when it came to time from manuscript submission to acceptance, professional medical writing support seemed to have a negative effect on this. So with professional medical writing support, in one study by Gattro et al. In 2016, with professional medical writing support, you seem to have longer period between submission and acceptance. However, a study by Shah showed that time to publication from the last patient visit in the clinical trials was reduced with professional medical writing support. And similarly, another study found that time from manuscript submission to acceptance was not affected by professional medical writing support. So interestingly, these two studies that are related to after the manuscript has been developed, were not, one had a negative effect of professional medical writing and one had no effect. Whereas the study that looked at the time that included development of the manuscript, which is when professional medical writers have their major effect, this effect was, there was a positive effect of professional medical writing on this particular outcome. So I think that particular outcome stands apart from the other two outcomes a little bit in a way. So to sum up, across a range of outcomes related to quality, ethics, or timeliness, overall there was a positive effect of professional medical writing support on adherence to consort and quality of written English and impact factor related outcomes, whereas adherence to consort for abstracts and article impact related outcomes were not improved by professional medical writing support. Reporting of non-pre-specified outcomes was reduced by professional medical writers, and time to publication, including the time for developing the manuscript, was improved with medical writing support, whereas time from submission to acceptance was either not affected or impaired by professional medical writing support. So the strengths of this study are that it was a broad search strategy. We used no limits on date or country or language, so we were able to create a timeline of basically the whole period that this kind of research has been happening. To limit publication bias, we also looked at conference proceedings. And then the outcomes we assessed were widely accepted measures of quality and were assigned independently of the investigators involved in each of the articles analyzed in each of the included studies. So things like quality of written English, for instance, is not something that the authors of each of the articles that were studied had control over. These were completely independent of, so these were sort of free from what can be described as something like a treatment bias, basically, because everything was done without the knowledge of the people doing the studies that were then studied. I hope that makes sense. And then one limitation of the study is that most of the identified studies were presented at conferences or published in non-peer-reviewed journals. So this being a relatively new area, it would be nice if future studies on the impact of professional medical writers could be published in full in peer-reviewed journals. So the implications of this study are that the results inspire confidence in the quality and transparency of articles reporting clinical trials that are written with professional medical writing support. And professional medical writers are also associated with a reduced time from clinical trial completion to the primary publication of the study. So in sum, professional medical writers appear to add value to the process of clinical trial reporting. In terms of further research, it would be good to assess the impact of professional medical writers on other types of studies. So this systematic review focused on clinical trial reporting, but a study by Desai et al. In 2018, which, as a disclosure, I was involved in that study. Professional medical writing was associated with increased transparency in health economics and outcomes research publications. So to conclude, in our systematic review of 8 studies assessing 849 articles developed with professional medical writing support, comparing them with 2,073 articles developed without professional medical writing support, professional medical writing support was associated with improved reporting quality, high quality written English, and a faster reporting of clinical trial results. Thank you for listening.